Starting off at number 10, we have Forget-Me-Not. I wanted to start this list off really small, with a character y'all may not know. Mainly because almost no one knows him because that's his power. Appearing in 2014, Forget-Me-Not had actually been a member of the X-Men for several years before this, but thanks to his abilities, no one can remember him. Forget-Me-Not's abilities make it so that he is imperceptible in all forms, basically. The power is so good that even Charles Xavier himself had to place a psychic reminder on himself so that he would remember Forget-Me-Not's existence. Clearly, that means some of the most powerful telepaths have difficulty discovering him, let alone remembering him. His power is to be forgotten, but the unique ways this power could be used, and the uniqueness of this power in general, will keep him in my mind. Number 9, we got Eye-Boy. Why is a guy named Eye-Boy on a list of strongest members of the X-Men? I see you, like many of the other mutants, are very judgmental. Trevor Hawkins' body is covered in eyes, 57 to be exact, which give him an array of powers that honestly, you kinda may expect. Microscopic, telescopic, X-ray, night, infrared, and thermal vision are all a part of his power list. But he can also detect chemicals, is an excellent marksman, and is skilled in nonverbal communication. He can almost read other people's minds by reading their behaviors and body language. He is an incredible tracker. He can predict attacks and can read people's histories just by looking at them. He can pinpoint weak spots in machines and people, is able to see electronic wavelengths and microwaves, is able to see past illusions and disguises as well as magic waves. He makes an amazing detective, in short. On top of all that, he can even pass what he sees onto others, but he has to be physically close enough for it to work. But to top it all off, the craziest and most unexpected power he possesses recently is solar blasts. We don't know how just yet, but Trevor can emit intense bursts of bright yellow energy and focused beams of extrastellar force that cause sunburns and radiation poisoning. Coming in at number 8, it's Gwenpool. I think Gwenpool has one of the strangest powers. That would be the power of medium interaction, which is because she comes from a reality very much like ours, as in superheroes are fictional people in comic books. So, when Gwen was transported to a pocket universe that recreated her home reality, Gwen's perception of the fictional world allowed her to gain the ability to recognize and manipulate the artistic medium that she was now in. She can see and physically interact with lettering and caption boxes, and touch and even break through panel gutters, allowing her to transport objects short distances through space and time by moving them across panels, and she interacts with different instances of herself from multiple panels on the same page. Now, I don't know if you've realized this, but this kind of means Gwendolyn Poole can kind of warp reality in a way. She kind of becomes one of the most crazily powerful characters in comics, at least potentially. She first showed up in Howard the Duck Volume 6 number 1 in November of 2015, and she has actually teamed up with many different characters and teams, including being a member of the X-Men on and off again. Number 7, Laura Kinney. I know, she isn't really new as a character, but Laura Kinney, or X-23, has become the all-new Wolverine, and that is relatively new. She officially joined the X-Men as this Wolverine at the Hellfire Gala in 2021. There are a few characters with powers similar to Wolverine, and there are even a few who are clones of Laura herself. But of all these characters, Laura is certainly the best and definitely the most fan-loved. Her powers are very similar to Logan's, with her primary mutant power being an accelerated healing factor. And obviously, she also has retractable bone claws, only she has 2 in her forearms and 1 in her foot. Well, each foot. She was obviously a clone and grew up being made to be a weapon, so of course she has an extremely haunted past. But with Logan as a father figure in her life, she grew up under him, and she even did the same for Gabrielle Kinney, another clone who Laura considers to be her younger sister. She's already done so much, but I just kinda can't wait to see what else she does as Wolverine. Number 6! It's Synch. Everett Thomas isn't a new character by any means, being first introduced in 1994, but while he was a part of Generation X, he didn't officially land on the team until this newest iteration of X-Men. He was also one of the first mutants resurrected by the Five on Krakoa, due to the fact that his powers could enable him to act as a substitute for any of the Five who might need to tag out. With that said, what are his powers? Sinch's powers are known as synchronistic power replication. Synch basically produces this really cool funkadelic looking aura that allows him to synchronize with other supers in his vicinity, letting him use their powers unless they leave the vicinity. But what's really interesting is that he doesn't need that person to be completely there. So if you had like a tissue sample from a superpowered person, he could sync with that and it would be enough. Since his resurrection, his powers have been amped up, giving him a limited memory bank of powers he's synced with. He became an official base member of the new X-Men team announced at the Hellfire Gala alongside Laura Kinney in X-Men Volume 5 number 21 in 2022. Number 5. Zorn. Question: what would you do if you and your twin brother developed the mutant ability of having your head become a star? Answer: I honestly don't know how you would still be alive to decide what to do in the first place. Shen Zorn and his twin brother Quan Yin Zorn both developed mutant powers that, in essence, were tiny stars that burned away and replaced their actual heads. They were both isolated, and they both wear super cool looking iron helmets with power dampeners to contain their power from doing too much damage. Shen is called Zorn with a Z, and his head is actually technically a black hole. And to keep things not confusing, Quan Yin is also named Zorn, but with an X. Okay, so what the heck can they do with their powers? Well, both of these characters can produce gravitational electromagnetism, which could actually allow them to heal others and use telepathy, and also, really weirdly, somehow allowed them to sense when people died and speak using shaking gravitational particles. Zorn, the one with a Z, could suck people into his black hole and even turn his black hole back into a sun. They could also both obviously do a lot of damage, using the power of a star to burn, blind, and incinerate people. They both became members of the X-Men at different times. X-Zorn was the first in 2002, but he wasn't always good. And his brother, Z-Zorn, joined more than a few years later. Number 4, it's Dupe. First appearing in X-Force number 116 in 2001, Dupe's origin story is kind of hard to explain, because we don't know for a fact what it is. Captain America tells us he was a US Cold War weapons project, and he apparently had some kind of role in the fall of communism. He was originally a member of X-Force until eventually becoming a member of X-Static. For such an unthreatening character, Dupe is surprisingly strong. He has been described as being an extra-dimensional being with a genius-level intellect, bordering on possible omniscience. And he has a large array of psionic powers, one of which includes controlling Russians. He can change his size and shape at will, allowing him to heal wounds and reassemble parts of his body if they have been removed or cut off. He has an incredible level of super strength and durability as well, with an unknown limit, being able to match and overcome Thor in a fight when he was in a weakened state, taking hits from Mjolnir while he did so. He seems to be able to come back from the afterlife, and he also has a pocket dimension inside himself that he can store things in and summon creatures from. He can also completely break the fourth wall and go across the comic panels. Dupe has defeated the devil all by himself. He is overpowered, and I don't know how anyone loses with him on their team. Coming in at number 3, it's Tempest. Eva Bell first was seen in All New X-Men number 1 in 2012, when we also saw her mutant powers manifest. She was out with friends and a boy when her brother showed up and began to get into a fight with that boy. The stress and duress of the situation caused her powers to pop off, and she completely froze everyone within a city block of her in time for 20 hours, until the X-Men showed up, helped her, and then took her in. She's been referred to as near Omega level, with her ability of chronokinesis within a time bubble, meaning she can freeze and slow down time and is one of the best at it in the world. She can also speed up time in the bubble by decades if she chooses to, which is why she's a member of the Five, to age up whoever is being resurrected. And she can even time travel. Although she has shown to lose control over this power from time to time, there is no doubt she is and can become more incredibly powerful. Number 2, Elixir. Joshua Foley, otherwise known as Elixir, is a mutant with Omega level healing abilities. He's incredibly powerful, and while originally was just considered a general threat, he can actually use his powers offensively as well, completely ending lives if he wants to. Using his mutant ability of biokinesis, Elixir is capable of controlling the biological structure of his own and other people's bodies down to the genetic level. Now this started off small, but has grown to allow him to simultaneously heal heal dozens of people, resurrect himself and others, and even the ability to control, manipulate, and absorb the life forces of other living creatures. Offensively, he can use his death touch to harm others, to cause different types of illness, massive swellings, and organ failure. He's even completely destroyed the body of enemies before. He is one of the core members of the Five, as I'm sure no one is surprised about, and he has been a member of the X-Men ever since he was one of the only surviving mutants who retained his powers at the Xavier Institute after M-Day, and he was trained to become one in 2006's New Mutants. Number 1. Hope Summers. Hope Summers was the first mutant born after the events of M-Day, the mutant decimation, or the day that Scarlet Witch cast No More Mutants. She was then taken into the far future and raised by Cable, being carried around in the coolest baby Bjorn you'll ever see. Not too long after, she returned to the present and her mutant powers finally activated. Her power is basically that of Omega level power manipulation. She can manipulate the powers of other mutants nearby to her, even mimicking their powers, but at full capacity and with complete control over those powers. And she can even take on multiple powers at once, but it is pretty tiring for her to do that. A large part of her role in the Krakoan society is as the leader of the Five, who use their abilities to resurrect the mutants of Krakoa. Her role on the Five specifically is both to boost their powers to their full potential and help them work in synergy with each other perfectly. She also helped terraform Mars alongside Vulcan and Proteus, giving them enough power to actually do it. She is such a cool character, and she first appeared back in X-Men Volume 2 number 205 in 2008, but was a child for much of that until she came of age and joined X-Force and the X-Men. Coming in at number 10, it's Pickles. I think his name alone just made me want to include him on this list. Pickles is what is known as a Banff, a race of demons who are basically little Nightcrawler-like imps, who possess similar attributes and powers as Nightcrawler and Azazel. Pickles himself lived inside Beast's van and was a backup in case anyone needed immediate transport somewhere, but he would later travel with Jean Grey and the X-Men in Jean Grey number 1 from 2017. As a Banff, Pickles can teleport by displacing himself into the Brimstone dimension, travel through it, and then return to the original dimension at a certain distance from the point of departure. But unlike Nightcrawler, Pickles doesn't require foreknowledge of his destination in order to safely teleport there. But much like Nightcrawler, Pickles can stick to objects with the surface of his hands and feet, and he's got a sweet little prehensile tail. This little imp also possesses an unknown degree of muscle memory mimicry, which enables him to quickly learn and perform new martial arts with little instruction or training. He's definitely one of those few minor X-Men characters, but he's just so cute. Number 9. Gazing Nightshade. First appearing in X-Men Blue number 6 in June of 2017, the Madripoor mutant calling herself Gazing Nightshade was part of a ruthless mutant vigilante group who were inspired by Wolverine called the Raksha. The group was stopped by Jimmy Hudson and the X-Men and eventually were invited to the X-Mansion. Gazing Nightshade has the really cool mutant ability of despair inducement, meaning whoever Nightshade gazes upon enters into a trance-like state of sorrow, fueled by their deepest regrets. And to make it just 10 times more metal, both the eyes of Gazing Nightshade's victims and her own eyes bleed when she uses her powers. I mean, that's not the coolest thing. She joins Polaris' makeshift roster of X-Men in X-Men Blue number 25 in 2018 before going back to the Raksha. Number 8. Trinary. Shilpa Khatri first showed up in 2018's X-Men Red number 1 as a new mutant joining Jean Grey's team of X-Men. Shilpa was a young mutant from India who developed technopathic mutant abilities, and first used them to top up the bank accounts of every working Indian woman using the money from 25 of the biggest earning CEOs in India. That's pretty cool. And while I think that's awesome and kind of hilarious, her father did not, and he reported his own daughter to the Indian Mutant Defense Force, which is where Jean Grey and her team rescued Trinary from. As a technopath, she has the ability to psychically control all forms of technology, such as computers, cell phones, and all that junk. Her limitation at this time is that she can only control technology that is in her line of sight, and her range is currently undetermined, but judging from other technopaths, she has potential to get much stronger. It just remains to be seen. Number 7. Gabby Kinney. We included Laura Kinney on the last list, so is it cheating to use her clone? I personally say no, because Gabrielle Kinney, aka Honey Badger and recently Scout, is just awesome. like a little feisty killing machine with adamantium bone sickles and crazy regenerative healing factor, and that also improves her strength, speed, and stamina. Gabby first appeared in All New Wolverine #2 in 2015, and she had a long history that, just like her other clone sisters, intertwined a lot with Laura, her genetic sister, and Wolverine, her genetic father. As Honey Badger, Gabby was seemingly a favorite of her sister, and basically became a sidekick to Laura Kinney, joining Jean Grey's X-Men alongside her sister in X-Men Red #1 in 2018. While Laura went on to become the new Wolverine, Gabby would go on to become Scout, and one of the main Wolverine family members. Oh, also her and Jonathan the Unstoppable, an actual Wolverine, like the animal, shared an immediate bond, and he is basically her pet, which is both really cool and kind of hilarious. Number 6. Gentle. Although Nesno Abidemi, son of a Wakandan woman and a Russian man, first appeared in 2006, he was only a student at the Xavier Institute until he joined the X-Men in 2009's Uncanny X-Men. Because of his father, Gentle was never treated right in Wakanda, even by his own mom, which is a little hypocritical because, you know, she got pregnant with a dude, but whatever. He was raised at the Wakandan royal court and was sent to the Xavier Institute by Aurora Monroe when his powers first manifested. Gentle's mutant ability is muscle mass expansion, which allows him to increase his size and strength almost instantly. He's done battle with a Sentinel, and his strength is said to rival Colossus, with his resting strength increasing every time he uses his powers. Because of his poor treatment though, he suffered from psychological trauma, which caused him to suffer great pain and seizures. To help his condition, Gentle's entire body was covered with vibranium tattoos to prevent him from overexerting, and they essentially keep him alive, with the added side effect of looking sick. Number 5. Oya. When Hope Summers came back from her future travels with Cable, there were 5 mutants whose X gene and abilities activated. These 5 were known as the Lights, and they were the first mutants since the events of M-Day, making them pretty important. Ide Onkokwo was 14 years old, living in Nigeria's Delta State when her mutant powers of thermokinesis activated, causing her to accidentally burn down her village. She was almost taken out by the military until the X-Men showed up to save her. Now, under the direction of Hope, and with the consent of Cyclops, the Lights began training as a rescue team for any other new mutant manifestations. Idea's ability of thermokinesis allows her to alter temperatures around her, with the limitation being that she cannot simply create hot or cold temperatures. She can only rechannel pre-existing temperature, meaning she needs the presence of heat to generate cold, and cold to generate heat, and vice versa. Oya first appeared in Uncanny X-Men number 528 in September of 2010. Number 4. Armor. Hisako Ichiki lived in Tokyo, Japan with her brother and parents when her mutant abilities activated, and she joined the Xavier Institute. She first appeared becoming just a student and member of Kitty Pryde's Paladin Squad in Astonishing X-Men Volume 3 in 2004, and would go on to become a member of the New X-Men after participating in Emma Frost's Battle Royale in New X-Men Volume 2 number 23 and 26. But finally, she officially joined the main X-Men team in Astonishing X-Men Volume 3 number 25 in 2008. Hisako's powers are pretty cool. As you might suspect from her name, Armor can generate strong, powerful, durable, and impenetrable psionic exoskeleton armor around her entire physical body that augments her strength, endurance, stamina, agility, invulnerability, and durability. The power of her abilities are greatly tied to her family and bloodline. So, for example, the strength, power, and size of her psionic armor greatly enhances when her relatives pass away. Which, I mean, if she was a villain, that could go south pretty quick. But luckily she's not, so we're good. Number 3. Bloodstorm. This is probably a bit of a spicy choice for this list. Bloodstorm is none other than Aurora Monroe, only she is from a different universe. Earth 21710 to be specific. This version of Aurora was a thief living in the streets of Egypt when she attempted to pickpocket a man who turned out to be Dracula. She was turned into a vampire and eventually managed to free herself from Dracula's control and find new purpose among the X-Men. Unfortunately for her though, her thirst for blood overpowered her, which resulted in her ending at least both Beast and Professor X. but it could have been more. She was recruited by the Goblin Queen of Earth 91240 as one of her Hexmen, and they invaded Earth 616, where Bloodstorm decided to switch sides and help the time-displaced X-Men Blue team. She was eventually recruited to the team by Cyclops. Now this is obviously Aurora Monroe, and even if she is from another universe, she is still extremely powerful. But on top of that, she has all the powers of vampirism, including being capable of transforming her body into mist and a flock of bats, and using her gaze to hypnotize people into doing her bidding. Number 2. Genesis. Honestly, don't know how y'all are gonna feel about this one. Evan Sabanur was created by Fantomex as a clone of Apocalypse, and as such has a lot of his powers, including superhuman strength, superhuman durability, and self-molecular manipulation, meaning Evan has total control over the molecular structure of his own body, enabling him to alter his form at will. He is able to transform his limbs into various weapons and equipment, such as blades and bludgeons for combat, or rocket boots for flight, as well as being able to alter his body to change in size. Evan also has a healing factor that can regenerate from serious injury like getting gashed by Daken's claws. And he can adapt his body to any disease or environment at will, and sometimes subconsciously. Another small, innocent ability Evan has is the potential for virtually any conceivable superhuman power ever. He once showcased fire or plasma breath when fighting Faithful John's mind drones, and also has a degree of energy projection, able to project dematerializer blasts from his eyes and emit energy blasts from his hands. He first appeared in Uncanny X-Force number 7 in 2011, but wasn't on the X-Men team until 2014, and even then, kind of as a student. As the clone of Apocalypse, Evan will potentially develop any of the powers possessed by him, but it also means people do fear him, which leaves him with a bit of an insecurity. And number 1, Darwin. Even somewhat casual fans of the X-Men know who Darwin is, if only because he was that guy who is supposed to be able to adapt to anything but gets de-lifed in like 2 seconds in the X-Men First Class movie. People were mad. And honestly, yeah, so was I. That makes no sense. Adapt to this, shut up. He literally could have. He literally could have. Armando Munoz, or Darwin, was first introduced in X-Men Deadly Genesis number 2 in December of 2005, and he would join the X-Men shortly after that. Darwin's powers are just the coolest. He's able to adapt to any situation, so basically, using his powers, he's been able to grow functioning gills after being submerged in water, gain night vision after being in the dark for several seconds, be able to survive without oxygen when in space, his skin has become fireproof when it's exposed to flames, and after touching Hela, Darwin became a death deity and gained powers similar to Hela, including immortality, Asgardian physiology, and control over life and death. There was even a time his intelligence increased itself to understand the Shi'ar language by looking at it in written form. Although sometimes his powers do not always take the effect he wants, like, for example, during his fight with the Hulk, his body teleported him away from the battle rather than supplying a power that would actually allow him to defeat the Hulk, which is kind of hilarious, to be honest.
At number 10 is Sam Wilson, aka the Falcon. Thank you to Rodney Lindsay 849 for suggesting him in part 1 of the series. Sam Wilson is the guy who became the new Captain America after Steve Rogers hung up his shield. But here's the thing, in the Avengers, even though he took on Cap's mantle, he's not exactly getting the spotlight he deserves. See, Steve Rogers, the OG Captain, is a tough act to follow, no doubt, but Sam's got the heart, the skills, and the wings to match. He's proven himself time and time again, but fans still don't give him the credit he's due. Let's not forget, he's carrying on the legacy of Captain America himself, and that's no small task. But nevertheless, Wilson's a great successor. This guy's got some mad skills. He can fly like a boss with those wingsuit thingies, plus he's got his vibranium shield that he rocks just as good as Cap did. But for some reason, he's often just pushed to the sidelines. At number 9 is White Tiger. Thank you to Victor Sage _. You might not have heard much about her, and that's honestly a real shame. White Tiger, aka Ava Ayala, made her appearance in the Ultimate Spider-Man and some LEGO Marvel games. She's got a pretty cool backstory too, being the sister of Hector Ayala, the original White Tiger. But here's the thing, she's been kind of left in the shadows. With her agility, strength, and that insanely underrated mystical amulet she's got the potential to be a real force on the Avengers team. There's also that whole fling with Peter Parker that fans seem to be really really into. So it's high time we get to see more of White Tiger in action. She's got what it takes to be one of the strongest Avengers, and it's about time she got the recognition she deserves. If you're enjoying this video so far, please support the channel by pressing like, subscribing to Top 10 Nerd, and ringing that notification bell. I would really appreciate it. At number 8, we got Hercules. The Avengers have housed a plethora of gods, you guys. But you see, when people think about godly Avengers, usually it's Thor that hogs the spotlight. But hold on a second, because Hercules deserves some serious recognition too. He's got the strength, the charisma, and an impressive set of abs, yet he often plays second fiddle to the god of thunder. Imagine being a god yourself and still living under someone else's shadow. Not cool, right? Like, even when you go into Herc's fandom wiki, his featured quote is literally a self-comparison to Thor about how whatever Thor can do, Hercules can do even mightier. It seems like no matter what, if Hercules is a part of the conversation, Thor has to be too. Or Maestro, I guess, but you get my point, right? Hercules deserves better. He's taken on cosmic threats, lifted entire mountains, and shown that he's more than just a pretty face. Let's give Herc some time to shine, Marvel. After all, the Avengers could use a bit more divine power in their ranks. At number 7 is Loki. Wait, what? Now, you might be thinking, why are you even considering Loki the literal antagonist of the first Avengers movie in a discussion about the Avengers? Well, it's because Loki is one of those characters who doesn't neatly fit into the good or bad box. He's kind of like that friend who's mostly a pain, but sometimes has moments of real kindness. When it comes to the Avengers, we often focus on the big names, but Loki's different. He's a trickster, a troublemaker, and he's caused his fair share of chaos, but deep down, there's a part of him that wants to do the right thing, and frankly, that's what makes his character so fascinating. So is Loki good or bad? Well, it's not that simple. See, people aren't just good or bad, they're a mix of both, and Loki here is no exception. He's made mistakes, but he's also shown that he can change and do the right thing when it counts. And so in the end, whether you think Loki deserves better or not, there's one thing for sure. He's a character who keeps us guessing, and that's what makes him one of the most intriguing Avengers of them all. And number 6 is Quicksilver, recommended by Nelson SC9670 and Rodney Lindsay 849. Again, Quicksilver bit the bullet way too early in the MCU. I mean, don't get me wrong, Wanda's cool and all with her reality bending powers, but her brother Pietro, aka Quicksilver, well, he definitely got the short end of the stick. See, he's got super speed, which is super awesome, but here's the deal. Quicksilver didn't get nearly enough screen time or development in the movies. I mean, sure, he had his moments, but they were just glimpses of what he could do. With a power like super speed, there's so much potential for epic action sequences. I mean, we've all seen the X-Men scenes. He could have been a real game changer in the MCU battles. Plus, he's also got that snarky attitude that could have added some humor to the team. So let's give Quicksilver the love he deserves, and maybe, just maybe, if fans cry loud enough, maybe we'll get another shot in the MCU. At number 5 is Jessica Jones. Jessica Jones is an Avenger who's been on the sidelines for way too long. You might have recognized her from her Netflix series, but in the comics, she's a powerhouse. Super strength, durability, and some mean investigative skills. Yet she's often overshadowed by big names like Iron Man and Thor. Now, while she's not out there space battling aliens, her street level heroics are just as vital. Imagine if she had just a little more screen time and a chance to shine alongside the heavier hitters. Jessica Jones deserves way more recognition and a bigger role in the MCU. At number 4 is War Machine. Now, many people just think of War Machine as sort of an Iron Man light, but he deserves way more credit than that. I mean, come on, his name is literally War Machine. The guy's suit of armor is loaded with firepower. Sure, he doesn't have the same level of tech or even charisma as Tony Stark, but he's a vital member of the team. Think about it. War Machine is a military asset that brings a different set of skills to the table. He's got the experience, the discipline, and the tactical know-how. Plus, the suit of his can go toe-to-toe with some serious threats. So let's not forget about War Machine when we talk about the Avengers, because he's definitely one of the strongest and deserves a lot more recognition. And number 3 is Jack of Hearts, recommended by Robert Pike 5670. Now, Now, the Jack of Hearts isn't your typical Avenger. See, he's got this super crazy cosmic power, like he can manipulate energy and stuff. Sort of like he's a walking nuclear reactor. But here's the thing, he's always kind of been underrated despite his insanely powerful superpowers. He's been in and out of the Avengers, never really getting the spotlight he deserves. I mean, okay, just imagine having that kind of power and not being in the spotlight. It's like having a Lamborghini and just keeping it in the garage, am I right? The Jack of Hearts is definitely one of the strongest Avengers, period, and it's about time he got the recognition he deserves. And number 2 is Madam Web. There's one character who's been lurking in the shadows, and I'm not talking about a stealthy superhero. I'm talking about Cassandra Webb here, aka Madam Web. Now, Madam Web is kind of like the unsung hero of the Marvel Universe. See, she's got this crazy ability to see into the future and across the multiverse. Basically, she's the ultimate guidance counselor for Spider-Man. But here's the thing, folks, she's been nowhere to be found in the movies. Not in the MCU, not in the Spider-Verse films, nada. I mean, come on, with her powers, she could have helped the Avengers dodge a lot of disasters. So let's hope one day Madam Web gets her time in the spotlight, because she's the unsung hero in the background who deserves a lot more love on the big screen in the foreground. And at number 1 is Black Widow. Honestly, I'm stunned that nobody mentioned Natasha Romanoff in the comments of part 1, which is surprising, because if there's any superhero who got relegated to the sidelines during the entire run of the MCU, it's Natasha Romanoff. Now, what's impressive about her is that she's just a regular human being, no superpowers. Yet she's keeping pace with all of these superhuman heavy hitters. But here's the kicker. She even went as far as to sacrifice herself during Infinity War, way before she even got her own solo film. Like, talk about a major oof. I mean, sure, eventually we got that prequel, but I mean, it would have been nice to see her come back at the end of Endgame. She deserved a lot more screen time, don't you think? You see, the strongest superheroes aren't just the ones with the flashiest powers, and Black Widow, being a human who just basically went to the gym her entire life, definitely proved that.
Kicking off the list at number 10, we have Multiple Man. James Madrox. He made his first comic book appearance in Giant Size Fantastic Four, issue 4. And right off the bat, he seems very soft-spoken. He seems very gentle. I mean, the Thing is yelling at him and he's literally like, "Why do you reject me? Why?" Like, he's so almost poetic in a way. And then when the Thing goes to clobber him, bam, there's multiple more men. Now, he wasn't used very much in the X-Men, but he spent most of his days with X-Factor. But this guy is underrated. His powers may seem kind of weak compared to somebody like Jean Grey, but these duplicates can each make a duplicate.
Let me try something. I'm Mr. Meeseeks. Look at me. I'm Mr. Meeseeks. I'm Mr. Meeseeks. Look at me. Hi.
At one point, this guy had 40 of him running around town. 40. Now, the duplicates think, they feel, and they act independently, but they're guided by the original James Madrox. In a way, they're guided. They kind of know what to do. Each of these duplicates manifests one aspect of James' personality, and the longer the time away, the more those traits become extreme. And if one of these duplicates passed away, he can sense that the general area where the body is, which is like the saddest radar ever. This guy could take over the world if he wanted. It would be like that scene from The Matrix, but with more monologues probably. And before we go on to this list of X-Men you probably wouldn't expect to be that powerful, guys, if you want to go ahead and give this video a thumbs up, just right there, just give it a little tap tap, and it helps our studio out quite a bit. You guys are the best. Thank you so much for watching. Let's get back to the list. Lickety split. Number 9, Darwin. We saw this next mutant for a hot minute in X-Men First Class. He was played by Eddie Gathegi, who unfortunately didn't survive too long. See, he threw his life down on the line in order to protect his fellow X-Men. And this was still in the early days too. What a champ. He first showed up in the comics in 2005 with X-Men Deadly Genesis issue 2. Armando Munoz looked a lot different than we saw on screen as well. Since he was 4 years old, he was bald, his arms were super long, and his eyes were changing. He sure looks a little bit different than the young, handsome actor that we saw in the movie. His ability comes in handy a lot actually, more so in the X-Men movies. See, in the comics, he's practically immortal. His ability once allowed him to survive Hela's death touch. I mean, it's a little bit different than the last time we saw him, that's for sure. Number 8, Caliban. An albino mutant and former member of the Morlocks, Caliban made his first comic book appearance in Uncanny X-Men 148. So he has the ability to track down any mutant. He actually sacrifices himself in the movie Logan, where Stephen Merchant played him. He was also in X-Men Apocalypse for a bit too, played by a different actor. He was played by Tomas Lamarcus. He was originally an ally to the X-Men, but once he became a tracker for Apocalypse in X-Factor issue 24, titled The Fall of the Mutants. So he's pretty powerful, and he's done a lot of cool stuff too. He may seem like a gentle, lanky, pale man, but when Caliban is stressed out in the comics, he gains 2 additional powers: super strength and fear absorption. So if you put him in a corner, he'll be able to absorb the psionic energy in your fear and use it to power himself up even more. Number 7, Glob Herman, aka Robert Herman, although Glob is much more fun to say. He made his debut in New X-Men issue 117, and he grew up with a father who despised mutants, so already he's off to a pretty rocky start. So when Glob mutated, his father was just not on board, so his mother drove Glob out to Westchester and just left him for Professor X. Like you leave a baby at a fire station. It's just like, yep, here you go, your problem now. This mutation was interesting. So his skin was this transparent living wax, which he's able to maintain being on fire, which is pretty amazing off the bat. You can light him on fire and he's good to go. That's amazing. He runs with the New Mutants now, and although his name is silly and he's literally a glob, he can also possess powers of super strength and super speed, despite how he may look. So he can get hit by these massive bombs like it's nothing, then he can fight whoever launched that bomb with ease. The X-Men literally once used him as a heat shield once. They strapped Glob to the front of their ship, and it didn't seem pleasant for a main Glob, but he was good. He didn't die or anything. He had to rest for a bit. Number 6, Toad. When you think of the name Toad in relation to a superhero, you're gonna picture something pretty silly in your head. And Mortimer Toneby isn't that far off from what you'd think. He made his first appearance in Uncanny X-Men issue 4. So he hops around, which seems silly, but his legs are so strong that he can leg press 3 tons. And it's not just his legs that are strong, his upper half possesses superhuman strength as well. His arms can lift about 1 ton. He also has flexible bone structure, regenerative healing factor, infrared vision, and the best part, his 30-foot long tongue can also act as a whip. And it can secrete venom that can give him mind control over your body, and his saliva is acid as well. Number 5, Wither. Making his first appearance in New Mutants Volume 2, Issue 3, Kevin Ford grew up thinking that he was cursed, or he was the most unlucky person ever, one or the two. See, his mutant power started manifesting, and then he noticed it first in his plants, and then he noticed it in his clothes, and then he noticed it in people. So what would happen is his plants would wither. They would wither and they would die. And then his clothes were starting to decay as well. So once his father figures out this mutation, he tries to calm him down, but coming into contact with him, obviously the inevitable happens. He sees the world in this lifeless or decaying way now. See, it's part of this mutation. He can disintegrate all forms of organic matter just by one touch. Whatever he touches withers, so now we get his name. It turns into dust within seconds, whatever it is. Now this seems boring, I guess. When you think of it in like a cinematic battle, it's not too exciting. But this guy can take out an entire elite squad just by touching them. I mean, realistically, just send him in always. No one's gonna expect it. All you have to do is get him to fist bump everybody and then bam, just like that, no more bad guys. Number 4, Nocturne. This next one, she comes from Earth 2182, where she's the daughter of Nightcrawler and Scarlet Witch. Now, she's got her dad's looks, unfortunately. She's blue, furry, she's got 3 fingers and 3 toes. She's got a tail and yellow eyes and pointed ears. Now, sure, she looks like she can take out any bad guy, like she looks like an alien. So she possesses the powers of both of her parents. She can blast off energy bolts, she can climb walls, but what makes her even more powerful is that she has the ability to possess others for 12 hours, or 1 lunar cycle. But once that timer is up, the victim is just completely out of it for 24 hours, just comatose. This super offspring packs a super punch, that's for sure. Number 3, Tattoo. Christine Cord made her comic book debut in the New X-Men issue 126. She was a student of the Xavier Institute, and she's known as Tattoo, well, because her mutation allows her to display messages or designs on her skin, and she can phase through matter, which is also kind of fun. She's pretty awesome. I mean, when you first think of her, you may just think of the skin messages and be like, oh, whatever. Maybe she's a spy. Maybe she can be like, send help and then use her skin. Cool, that's good. But check this out. Tattoo actually phased her hand into Cyclops' head once and told him that if she becomes solid, he would not survive to see the end of it. How awesome is that? But she sadly lost her powers during the events of M-Day, but if you ever ran into Christine again, she would probably surprise you with her new ability. When she was released from jail, she joined the New Warriors and was given her own Stiltman armor, becoming Longstrike. So bam, 2-in-1. Talk about underrated. Number 2, Banshee. The Screaming Banshee. Okay, he made his first appearance in X-Men issue 28. Sean Cassidy was born as the heir to the castle and estate of Cassidy Keep, Ireland. Now, Professor Xavier asked him to join the X-Men at the same time as Thunderbird, and they both stayed as members of the new X-Men. Now, he went on to train the new generation of X-Men and Generation X, but he sadly lost his life during Deadly Genesis when he was trying to stop Blackbird from crashing when it was taken over. So when you think of an X-Men who screams so loud he can hurt people, it's impressive on its own, sure, but his screams are actually stronger than we really think. His screams can actually break through an inch of steel. And with these wings that Professor X developed for him, he's able to harness his power and use his screams as energy to help him fly. So he can do so much more with his voice as well. He can tighten the sound waves around himself to make a sonic shield, and he can influence your subconscious by changing the tones and vibrations of his voice. He can literally change your mind. How awesome is that? What do you mean you want a divorce? And finally, number 1, we have my favorite on the list, Bailey Hoskins. Okay, I have to talk about this poor kid. Okay, strongest X-Men you wouldn't expect? Yeah, that is for sure Bailey Hoskins. The only appearance of this kid is in the 2016 miniseries X-Men, Worst X-Man Ever, which is a pretty cruel name. He was a student at Xavier's School for Gifted Youngsters, and his power is pretty spectacular. He can self-detonate, he can make himself explode, and you would never expect it just by looking at him. I mean, come on. He reminds me of Hogarth from the Iron Giant. He's such a cute kid. The thing is, he can only use this fantastic ability once. And his last issue in the comics was X-Men Worst X-Man Ever, issue 5.
Number 10, the Wonder Twins. Look, they aren't really Justice League members, but they were interns, which is like part of the way there, right? Maybe. If you watched that video about weird DC multiverse characters, then you know these two. The Wonder Twins are 2 alien siblings from the planet Exor who possess some interesting shape-changing powers. The sister Jaina has the ability to transform into any animal, which is a potentially very useful and powerful ability, and it's always pretty fun. The brother, on the other hand, Zan, is capable of turning into water in any of its states, so liquid, steam, or ice. Again, potentially pretty cool, but more often it's not though. And honestly, he always seems to play second fiddle to his sister anyways. The two were first introduced in Super Friends, where they were much more cheesy and did a whole lot of fist bumping. They still do, but it's sweet now. Number 9, Hawk Girl, a classic. After assisting in the defeat of Barbados and the Dark Knights, Kendra Saunders' Hawk Girl was recruited to join the new Justice League as Hawk Girl, a core member of the team. Nice. While not a totally new character, she did have a fight with Barbados, and that gave her this new nth metal fusion power. This gives her nth metal psychoreactive wings that look totally awesome. They can slice through flesh and are able to completely heal all by themselves. She has been reincarnated so many times and has so much experience that she makes an extremely effective and powerful member of the Justice League. As well as her cool new wings, Kendra also has several powers including enhanced strength, enhanced durability, enhanced vision, accelerated healing, self-sustenance, and has been taught telepathic resistance by Martian Manhunter. Unfortunately, she was one of those members of the League affected by the death of the Justice League thing. But that leads us directly into the next 5 points, so that's good. Number 8, Jace Fox's Batman. Okay, yes, I'm structuring this a little differently. So after the death of the Justice League, 5 legacy characters have been teased to be stepping up into the mantles of their predecessors. Timothy Jace Fox seems to be the one stepping into the role of Batman. First appearing in Dark Knight's Death Metal number 7 last year, he actually took on the role of Batman after Gotham became a police state ruled by the Magistrate, who hunted down masked characters, and Batman seemingly met his demise. That's Bruce Wayne Batman. Jace wears a batsuit very similar to the classic, only with a full face covering. In the art for the new Dark Crisis coming out next month, he seems to just have a regular cowl though. He has created a new bat symbol and has teamed up with Jason Todd Nightwing. He also hums to himself while fighting criminals, which is kinda cute, honestly. Number 7, Joe Maline's Green Lantern. Sojourner Maline was granted a Green Lantern ring after she was unceremoniously fired from the New York City police force. She became the Green Lantern of an unnumbered sector, with her first main job being in the City Enduring, an alien planet city inhabited by 3 previously warring races. She's tasked with solving the city's first murder in 500 years. It's pretty serious. Joe's ring recharges over time instead of requiring a battery, which, as a trade-off, makes it a bit weaker. It's still a Green Lantern ring though, so she ain't someone to mess with. This non-reliance also proves really useful when the central power battery explodes at a Green Lantern meeting Joe was running late to, taking out a bunch of lanterns and depowering a whole heck of a lot more of them. She took charge here like a true hero should. She has been teased to be taking over the role of Green Lantern. Obviously. Number 6. Jackson Hyde's Aquaman. Jackson Hyde is actually the son of one of Aquaman's main villains, Black Manta. But luckily, he fights for justice, hence being part of this video. As Aqualad, with his hydrokinesis and Atlantean powers, he has been a part of the Teen Titans, Young Justice, and has fought alongside Aquaman against his own father, and has even temporarily stepped into the mantle of Aquaman in one of his major story arcs. He has proven himself capable, if not a little undisciplined, and he, alongside Joe Mullane, Jace Fox, Yara Flor, and John Kent, was part of the alternate Justice League in Future State, so we know he has the means to take over the role. Just like the last two, he is poised to take over the position of Aquaman, allegedly, in the upcoming Justice League. Number 5. Yara Flor's Wonder Woman. Ayla was an Amazonian who left Themyscira and settled in Brazil, where she fell in love with a Brazilian river deity. You know, like you do. The child these two would create became the Amazonian Brazilian demigod Yara Flor. Living in an Amazonian village, they were attacked by agents of the Greek gods, and Ayla lost her life. But Yara was taken to Idaho by a woman named Renata, who became her adopted mother. After her return to Brazil, she gets magical golden boleadoras, meets a human she hits it off with, is stabbed with an arrow by Eros, who she falls in love with, and is taken to Mount Olympus, where she is trained, given gifts, and gets a Pegasus named Jerry. Nice. She's offered the role of becoming Hera's champion, but after learning of her true origins, she refuses, and after a lot of scuffling, she brings some Amazons to defeat those responsible for the de-lifing of her own mother. She has become Wonder Girl, and was Wonder Woman in that Future State Justice League I keep talking about to defend my reason for putting these characters on this list. It'll be cool to see her actually step into the role of Wonder Woman, if that's what happens. Number 4. John Kent. And last, but extremely not the least, apparently, stepping into the role of Superman in the Justice League will be none other than his own son, Jonathan Samuel Kent. Look, it just makes sense. John obviously was a member of the League's reserves before this point, but taking over the role of his father would be a big step up if it is ultimately what comes to pass. The son of Clark and Lois Lane, Jonathan began fighting crime at the age of 10. John possesses all the same powers as his father, plus a solar radiation explosion thing that isn't really under his control. According to Batman, he actually has the potential to surpass his father's power levels thanks to his half-human physiology, which kind of makes no sense to me, but whatever. Jonathan actually became Superman when his father left Earth to go to War World, so he has had a bit of experience, which will hopefully help him if he does become the new Superman of the Justice League next month. And that covers every one of the characters teased to take over the respective roles in the League. A few of these characters are part of the future Justice League, so it remains to be seen what role exactly these few will play, and I may have doomed myself to be roasted in the comments, so there's that. Number 3, Hippolyta, or however you want to say it. Queen of Themyscira, she takes over the role of Wonder Woman in the Justice League in the Infinite Frontier storyline. Now, Diana isn't perished. Well, she is now, but not when her mother took over in the Justice League. Diana had ascended after defeating the Darkest Night, and with Hippolyta having dubbed Nubia as the newest ruler of Themyscira, she was pretty free to take on the role in the Justice League. It's interesting to see her interact with Aquaman, and the small amount of time her and the number 1 spot got to work together was also rather interesting. As an Amazonian, she possesses pretty much all the same powers as her daughter, just better because, you know, she's been around longer. Unfortunately, this whole thing didn't last very long with the whole death of the Justice League thing. Number 2, Naomi McDuffie. Joining the team just after our number 1 spot in Justice League Volume 4, number 63, Naomi McDuffie is a teenage energy-based hero who was actually sent to the Prime Earth from an alternate reality to be spared from this really crazy villain, Zumbado, who rules over her native Earth. While her powers are unstable and she hasn't quite learned a complete control over them yet, Powerhouse's powers are confirmed to be Omega level in nature, so that's enough to put her pretty high on this list. She basically transforms into a golden armored superpowered form, which gives her a kind of energy projection that she uses to enhance her punches, making them very super indeed, and she also uses them to fire energy blasts. Interestingly, Naomi can also augment magical powers, kind of opposite to how Superman is weakened by them. In her super form, she can fly and obviously has super strength and durability. Number 1. Black Adam? What? That's right, joining the Justice League in Volume 4, number 60 of the team's self-titled comic, thanks to an invite from Superman, it's my second favorite Adam other than myself. Teth Adam was an unwilling laborer back in ancient Egypt who received power from the wizard Shazam, just like that other guy in red with a lightning bolt. What was his name again? I forget. Black Adam actually loses his life and after his resurrection was no longer powered by the wizard. Instead, he gained his power from 6 Egyptian deities: Shu, Horus, Amun, Sehuti, Aten, and Mehen. Funny how they happen to still spell it Shazam though, huh? And he still shouts Shazam to activate his powers too. Naturally. He also makes for quite a great leader, being the ruler of the African nation of Kondak. However, he hasn't traditionally been a great team player, and well, the whole supervillain anti-hero thing doesn't really help his case either. I'm just interested to see where this goes, to be perfectly honest. Alright, kicking off the list at number 10 today is Martian Manhunter. Now look, Martian Manhunter may be one of the main Justice League members, but he gets slept on way too much. I will always reference this when describing John's power, but there is a panel from the New 52 when Martian Manhunter is fighting off all the members of the Justice League at the same time. With his left hand, Manhunter is using his shape-shifting ability to turn that hand into a massive spiked club and whacking away both Cyborg and Green Lantern. With his right hand, I think it's safe to say he's showing off his super strength as he's got a power grip on the lasso of truth, and I'm assuming he's just resisting its power. Behind him is Aquaman, who's like jabbing John with his trident, but the trident is just phasing through him because John can become intangible. Then we got Superman, who's like flying around the fight at a decent distance while Manhunter uses his heat vision to keep him there. And then the funniest part is Batman doing absolutely nothing, just picking up the Flash, who seems to have just been knocked down. It's almost a perfect display of his abilities, but leaving out a handful and one of the biggest. John is the most powerful telepath on Earth, and one of the most powerful in the entire universe. Martian Manhunter has been called the most powerful being on the planet, and he's at the top of the list of people that Superman is afraid to fight. Number 9, Booster Gold. Poor old Booster Gold, the greatest hero that you've probably never heard of. His day job involves traveling through time and space, ensuring that events that are meant to happen do happen, and he absolutely rocks at it. There was even a time that Booster went so far as to create an entire second persona named Supernova for himself, while simultaneously faking a psychological breakdown and eventually faking the passing of his own Booster Gold identity, all while he went and successfully replaced several major superheroes who were missing at the time, including Superman. The thing about Booster Gold is that in order to protect himself from other time travelers, Booster has to come across as a failure, an absolute dumpster fire of mediocrity. Somebody that no one will ever want to bother with remembering anything about in the future. That's why Booster has this shtick of being greedy, incompetent, and attention-seeking, which actually kind of began as genuine, but has long since been a facade. He willingly endures a life of ridicule from the people he protects without them knowing, because when you're dealing with time travel, being the butt of the joke actually gives you an advantage. Booster is also called upon to maintain events which are pretty much less than excellent, like ensuring that bad things that have to happen actually happen. For example, he routinely guards a little German baby boy born on the 20th of April 1889 in a small town in Austria-Hungary from other first-time time-traveling superheroes. He does all of those things because the alternative is the complete unraveling of all time and space and the destruction of everything. Number 8, Firestorm. Where do we even start with Firestorm? The main version of the character is Ronnie Raymond, who is fused with his professor, Martin Stein. But there are a lot of other versions of Firestorm, a lot of whom are either one person or different fusions of other people. It's annoyingly complex. The character, as you might guess, has pyrokinetic abilities plus durability, flight, reflexes, and super strength. But the character's main thing is that they can rearrange the molecules of matter. Now this ability is obviously incredibly OP, and it would simply take one story to make him completely god level, but for the most part, writers kind of misuse him. Potentially, this character could transform entire planets into whatever he wanted. With this power, Firestorm's done some pretty godlike things. For example, Firestorm manifested a pink bunny mascot suit out of thin air around the villain's Skull Crusher. He's turned explosions into a jack-in-the-box, and a cement truck into a giant teddy bear. It's kind of hilarious, but like low-key, absolutely insane. On a way less hilarious note, he also turned a girl into salt when he was resurrected as Deathstorm. And in Doomsday Clock, Firestorm accidentally turned a crowd of Russian protesters into glass. But outside of matter manipulation, Firestorm has had some impressive feats, like surviving the nuclear meltdown that originally created the hero and absorbing all the excess radiation. And another time, Firestorm survived a straight-on nuclear explosion. An alternate version of the character called Deathstorm was able to absorb and capture 3 different Justice League teams into its own Firestorm matrix. And in Infinite Crisis, Firestorm was able to seal a multiversal rift. In case you haven't noticed, we have kind of moved away from physically unstoppable characters to characters that are just pure science fiction gods. Number 7, John Constantine. John Constantine is a really fun inclusion for this list because he is extremely powerful and not powerful at all at the same time. John can wield magic for sure through years and years of learning, training, traveling, but he doesn't have any kind of magical affinity or any kind of beneficial magical family heritage. John relies on actual magic as a very last resort, and the magic he knows how to use isn't anything to scoff at. He has even, very momentarily, been able to hold back Dr. Fate, but using magic comes at a cost, and he knows this. So what Constantine prefers is trickery. Lies, deceit, traps, his wits, weapons, artifacts, backup, and calling in favors. John smokes, he drinks, he's in his middle ages, and he ain't in the greatest of health. He can throw a punch, for sure, but most people are a physical match for him. But at the same time, he has been able to trick, outsmart, or overpower gods, demons, and angels. Batman, Superman, Darkseid, Swamp Thing, Dr. Fate, the Phantom Stranger, the Spirit of Justice, the Spectre, the Spirit of Vengeance, Lucifer, and even the Presence, who is basically DC's version of God. He tricked them all. He tricked the Presence into curing John of cancer and granting him divine protection by selling his soul to 3 separate Hell Lords who would start a civil war over his soul, which would spill out onto Earth and into heaven. Don't sleep on this bad-mouthed middle-aged man. Number 6. Atom Smasher. Thanks to exposure to radiation, Atom Smasher is already an incredibly impressive looking guy. He stands at 7 foot 6 inches tall, and he is jacked. This guy's bicep is probably bigger than my torso, which isn't really saying much, but his real power is being able to grow even bigger. He has the power of atomic dispersal, meaning he is able to control the distance between his atoms, increasing to anywhere from 28 to 60 feet in height. His mass, durability, strength, speed, and stamina are all increased even more so as he grows. Now, Albert Rothstein made his superhero debut under a different name. Initially, Al went by the superhero alias of Nuklon, and he was an original member of the superhero team called Infinity Inc. But following in his godfather, the Atom's footsteps, Albert took on his Atom Smasher name and joined up with the Justice Society of America in JSA number 1 by James Robinson. The thing about Atom Smasher that makes me think he deserves better is his entire interaction with Black Adam. When Black Adam joined the JSA, one of its members that he happened to get close with was Atom Smasher, and he even convinced Smasher to leave the team and start an anti-hero team instead, which led Smasher down a darker path, even becoming part of the Suicide Squad for a time. He has been redeemed since, but I don't think he ever really deserved that in the first place. Number 5, Hawkman. Hawkman is a doozy to talk about. Essentially, he has 2 main origins. He was either a space cop or a reincarnated prince, and sometimes both. Basically, Hawkman's secret identity is Carter Hall, an archaeologist and a museum creator who is actually a reincarnation of the ancient Egyptian prince, Khufu. Now Khufu, who would become known as Hawkman, discovered an alien spacecraft from the planet Thanagar powered by an anti-gravity element called the Nth metal. which transformed his soul and doomed him and his love to be reincarnated over and over again throughout time. Some of his incarnations include Brian Kent, the Silent Knight from 5th century Britain, Conrad von Grimm, the son of a blacksmith in 14th century Germany, Captain John Smith of the 16th century English colony in Virginia, Hannibal Hawks, the Nighthawk in the American Old West, Detective James Wright, a Pinkerton detective in the early 20th century, and finally, Carter Hall himself. Whether it's because of his really confusing origins, or maybe because people don't realize how cool this character actually is, he just kinda seems to suck. And when I was a kid, I thought he was super cool. Oh, to be an innocent, sweet child again. Number 4, Raven. Teen Titans and Teen Titans Go brought the new Teen Titans to a big audience, and one character who really stood out is Raven. She's been like the character on that team that everyone seems to like regardless of who you are. Seriously, you can't go to a comic book convention without seeing someone rocking a Raven cosplay. She's like the goth icon for superhero fans. Raven's super popular, and it's kind of strange that DC hasn't done more with her. She's got an awesome but also absolutely terribly upsetting backstory, crazy strong powers that could literally destroy all we hold dear, and a personality that fans absolutely adore. Honestly, she could totally be DC's version of a much better and more interesting Scarlet Witch without any trouble. It's just frustrating that DC isn't giving her more love in the comics like they do in the shows. Number 3, Aquaman. The ocean is a genuinely terrifying and interesting place. As such, the Atlanteans of DC Comics possess a few advantages over us regular humans. They have super strength, speed, endurance, and durability, all in order to help them survive the mind-boggling pressure at the insane depths of the ocean at which they live. But Aquaman himself is a royal Atlantean, which means that he is a super Atlantean. His strength and durability has allowed him to close the Marianas Trench, which I don't even know how that works, go toe-to-toe with powerful foes like Martian Manhunter, Lobo, and Wonder Woman, and tank blasts from Starro. His speed, which is often forgotten about, allows him to swim at 10,000 feet per second, and he can move even faster without the pressure of water drag, allowing him to dodge bullets and catch lasers. But Aquaman has quite a few other advantages. His control over sea life has helped him in a large majority of his fights, with his underwater allies coming to his aid and helping him do things he probably couldn't do alone, like creating a massive tsunami with whales. His telepathic skill is actually quite impressive as well. Some of my favorite feats include him telepathically controlling a Green Lantern ring, reading the Martian Manhunter's mind without permission, and controlling a space dragon. For a while, he also had a hand that was a hook, and then that became a magical mystical water hand that could do a whole other level of feats, but I'm kind of out of time, so we're moving on. Number 2, Animal Man. Thanks to an encounter with some rather strange aliens, Bernard Buddy Baker gained access to the morphogenic field, otherwise known as the Red. This field basically allows Buddy to absorb and use different attributes of nearby animals while still being a human. So he has been able to move his eyes independently like a chameleon. He's been able to ram against a speeding car with the abilities of a rhino. He can fly by tapping into birds. He's regenerated a whole lost limb by tapping into an earthworm, gained the strength to lift a car by tapping into a spider, and he's ran at 75 miles per hour by adopting the abilities of an ant. But his abilities have done some even more surprising things, like for example, when a villain cut Buddy off from the nearby animals by putting him in a room, he took on the attributes of the bacteria inside that villain's body, allowing Animal Man to duplicate himself. He can even tap into the attributes of extinct animals like dinosaurs, which has allowed him to punch out a T-Rex and survive being crashed into by a plane. Over time, he's received power boosts that allow him to use multiple abilities at once, and then to even use the abilities of any animal in the universe, like when he used the power of a quote sun eater, which let him fly across the galaxy in an instant. Number 1, Icon. While Milestone's Dakotaverse isn't currently a part of the DC universe, the New 52 previously merged the universes together with the Wildstorm reality. Icon returned as the most powerful Milestone character in the new Earth M setting. He was originally an alien named Arnis, whose ship crashed on an Earth plantation. Arnis was raised as an unwilling servant named Augustus Freeman until his memories and powers developed during the Civil War. He spent 100 years working as a lawyer before Raquel Irvin convinced him to become the costumed hero Icon and set an example for others. Icon has incredible strength that rivals Superman's. Icon also has incredible reserves of energy that he can project in various forms. He's one of the best Superman-like characters, and yet I feel like he just hasn't been given any real good times to shine recently. It's like DC kinda just forgot about him and a lot of the Dakotaverse alongside him.
At number 10 is Red Tornado. Thank you to Sunstar808 for suggesting this one in the comments of part 1. Red Tornado was basically if Vision and Avatar Aang had a baby. Created by the villainous T.O. Morrow, this android hero's body is powered by a sentient wind elemental named Ulthun. Now, what makes him stand out is, well, he boasts some seriously impressive abilities. First off, that android body of his grants him superhuman durability, stamina, and strength, but his supernatural powers are that he can manipulate wind, allowing him to move at superhuman speeds, fly, and even generate powerful vortexes. He can even transform into a human-looking form at will, so he's basically DC's answer to Vision, y'all. And since he is an android, Red Tornado is also a computer whiz and a skilled teacher. As Sunstar808 put it in the comments, he's a powerful AI being that's often relegated to a background player, even though its abilities exceed more popular members of the Justice League. At number 9 is Zatanna. Thank you to Karen Starr for this one. Zatanna is one of the unsung heroes of the DC universe who possesses a staggering array of magical abilities. Her mystical prowess grants her dominion over both cosmic and supernatural forces, effectively rendering her as a sorceress supreme. I'm a Marvel fan. Through her unique method of backward speech known as logomancy, she can initiate a wide range of supernatural effects. This includes manipulating the very fabric of reality, altering weather patterns, controlling gravity, and even disintegrating objects with a mere word. Not limited to just a magician's bag of tricks, Zatanna can heal wounds, turn invisible, and reshape molecular structures. Telekinesis, teleportation, and the ability to create force fields further cement her as a formidable hero. She's even delved into dark magic, showcasing her willingness to pay the high cost of such power. Now, despite her astounding abilities, Zatanna's magic often exacts a toll, and she's not without her limitations, particularly in her reliance on speech for logomancy. Still, this magical maven certainly deserves more recognition and appreciation than she tends to get. If you're enjoying this video so far, you can support the channel by pressing like, subscribing to Top 10 Nerd, and ringing that notification bell. I would really appreciate if you did. At number 8 is Superboy. Thank you to Jamie Kane 3847 for this one. Honestly, I didn't really want to bring up Condor Kent, but you guys only gave me like 9 suggestions in the comments. Speaking of which, somebody said the channel should relegate me to being a research boy, so I was determined not to do any research for this video. Thanks, Jacob. Anyways, Superboy, or Con-El, stands as one of the DC Universe's most powerful, underrated powerhouses. Born as a DNA-alien clone designed to replace the fallen Superman, he's got more than just good genes, because we've got his nifty tactical telekinesis, power that forms a force field around him which mimics Superman's abilities like super speed, super strength, flight, and invulnerability. So technically speaking, at least at first, Con-El is simply using telekinesis to mimic Superman's powers. Now let's talk about character development. Superboy has had his share of arrogance issues, particularly thanks to his DNA mix, which includes a dash of Lex Luthor. Over time, he's earned some humility, but that ego can still sneak up and bite him in the cape, causing some messy situations. At number 7 is Raven. Also known as Rachel Roth, she's a superhero who deserves more recognition in the DC universe. Her backstory is a roller coaster of emotions. She's the half-demon daughter of Trigon, a nasty demon who wants to take over the planet. Her mom, Arella, is just a human caught up in this demon drama. Raven's got to keep her feelings in check 24/7 or she risks going full-on apocalypse mode. But here's the thing, she's got a heart of gold buried underneath all that darkness. Despite her demon daddy issues, she's found a second family in the Teen Titans. And boy, oh boy, does she pack a punch. She can project her consciousness, manipulate darkness, create energy constructs, and even mess with time. The list goes on and on. She can fly fly, teleport, control fire and electricity. I mean, Raven's got it all. In the words of Chris Bradley, who suggested this entry in part 1, Raven definitely deserves better. She is very powerful, she looks very beautiful and stunning in her costume. I also think that Raven is the DC Comics version of Scarlet Witch. Basically what I'm saying is that Raven is awesome, period. At number 6 is Mr. Terrific. Thank you to Trek Staven 4726, I think. Sorry I butchered your username. Mr. Terrific is both Terry Sloan and Michael Holt, who are DC legacy superheroes who truly deserve more attention. But I can see why they haven't really gotten any, because their superpower is literally just being a Marty Stew. Terry Sloan, the original Mr. Terrific, was a remarkable individual with unmatched athletic abilities, intellect, and unwavering commitment to justice during the golden age of comics. His character serves as an inspiring symbol of what a person can achieve through determination and hard work. Later on, Michael Holt took on the mantle, the modern incarnation of Mr. Terrific, who ranks as the 3rd smartest person on the planet. Not only is he a brilliant inventor and businessman, but he's also the founding member of the Terrifics, a superhero team with unique powers and abilities. Both of these Mr. Terrifics possess an almost too good to be true quality, often seen as Marty Stews because of their extraordinary capabilities. In a world filled with superpowered heroes, Mr. Terrific stands out as the embodiment of unpowered human potential, much like Batman does, except without all the clout. At number 5 is Hitman. Despite his rather grim occupation as a hitman, Tommy's character has depth that's often overlooked. He got a raw deal when he was bitten by a parasite, granting him telepathy and X-ray vision. This upgrade could have propelled him into the spotlight, but sadly, he remains a hidden gem. His telepathic powers, though limited, gave him an edge in battles. He could sense impending threats, making him a formidable opponent, and on top of that, his X-ray vision allowed him to see through objects and environments, obviously. Tommy's military training equipped him with firearm skills, but he's far from invincible, often being outmatched. Plus, his telepathy came at the cost of chronic migraines, which he tried to alleviate with alcohol, showcasing his very human side. The fact that Tommy hasn't made it to live-action adaptations, not even appearing in the Arrowverse, is definitely a mystery. Perhaps James Gunn can give this underrated hero the recognition he deserves. At number 4 is Metamorpho. Metamorpho is the Element Man, a diamond in the rough in the world of DC superheroes. Imagine having the power to morph your body into any element you desire, from liquid to gas to solid, even toxic compounds. Rex Mason's transformation was triggered by exposure to an ancient meteorite's energy, turning him into a metahuman with a twisty, stretchy, and bouncy physique reminiscent of rubber. He's basically a walking chemistry lab and a living Swiss Army knife with the ability to create gadgets on the fly. But here's the kicker, he's not just about elemental fun and games. Metamorpho packs a punch with superhuman strength and durability. He's a skilled martial artist and has an uncanny knack for aviation and investigation. Yet this elemental hero remains largely unappreciated. He's been a part of various superhuman teams, but he's never quite demonstrated his full potential. And number 3 is Element Girl, who gained her powers by replicating the very incident that gave Metamorpho his abilities, becoming a metamorphite just like him. By the way, this entry, the last entry, was suggested by Trek Extravagant 4726. Thank you very much. Anyways, thanks to Amun-Ra, the sun god of Egypt, she could transform her body into any elemental compound and manipulate it at will. Sadly, her life took a dark turn. After leaving the CIA, she sank into depression due to her transformed appearance, which left her feeling like a freak. She attempted to unalive herself multiple times, but her powers prevented her from doing so. It was only when the essence of being unalive itself intervened that she found relief. She then implored Ra to take away her powers, allowing her to finally find eternal peace. In the end, despite her incredible abilities, depression was her greatest weakness, and it's a reminder of the importance of mental health even for the most powerful superheroes. And number 2 is Doom Patrol. The Doom Patrol is a team of metahuman heroes who often go unnoticed in the vast world of DC superheroes, but they truly deserve better recognition. This unique group consists of individuals who have been shunned by society due to their unusual powers, which have caused them immense alienation and trauma. Led by Niles Calder, known as the Chief, who was actually fired because they suspected him for causing the origin stories of a lot of these superheroes to begin with. The Doom Patrol faces foes in situations that are downright bizarre, making their adventures stand out among all the other superhero teams in DC. Their lineup includes Beast Boy, who can morph into any animal, Elastigirl, who, her power speaks for itself. Mento, who went back in time to try to prevent himself from taking over the future, super cool. And Robot Man, a former race car driver who now inhabits a formidable android body. In my opinion, the Doom Patrol boasts some of the most potent heroes in the DC universe, and it's high time they receive the recognition and love they truly deserve. Adam Eve, recommended by William Kituri, who technically isn't even a DC character, but I mean, you recommended it, and there is a DC crossover at one point, so I'm gonna allow it. As Adam Eve, her main power is subatomic manipulation, meaning that with sheer willpower alone, she can sense and manipulate matter and energy at the subatomic level, essentially reshaping reality. Flight? No problem. Adam Eve alters air density to soar through the skies. Force fields? Yep, she conjures them up using her transmutation powers. And she's even got telekinesis too. Energy blasts? Yeah, she's got that too. And while she commands nature's elements at the subatomic level, rearranging atoms and molecules to transmute matter, her powers don't typically work when used on organic life. You see, mental blocks limit her abilities, but extreme emotional moments can shatter those barriers, allowing her to unleash her power on organic matter. But for someone who can allegedly rearrange atoms on a molecular level, she doesn't always seem to be using it most effectively. I mean, she could take out whoever she wanted by, say, I don't know, turning the air in your lungs to ammonia. I mean, let's get real. Even with the cap on organic life, she should still be way more OP than she's depicted.
Number 10, Hellstrom. Hellstrom is Damon Hellstrom, also sometimes going by the name Damon Hellstorm, the son of Satan. His initial appearance in Marvel Comics was shrouded in controversy due to him being marked as, well, you know, the son of the devil. But in recent years, this all died down with the ultimate dissolution of the Comic Code Authority, which made moral judgment calls on what subject matter could be covered or touched upon, even in comics, a lot less controversial, let's just say, for the most part. Damon's father might not actually be the devil, as a few in Marvel Comics have made claims to this title. But either way, he still has become the ruler of at least a hell dimension, thanks to his birthright. While Damon is not known for appearing on the main Avengers team, he is known for being married to a fellow Avenger in the past, Hellcat, and has been a member of the Savage Avengers, which is why I'm counting him here. Although, lately, I feel like he's been a little less hero-y in the comics. And friends, before I move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, why not show us you love us by clicking that like button? Do it, it's good for you. You know what people say? An apple a day keeps the doctor away, a like a day keeps me at bay from telling you all of that all the time. Number 9, Hellcat. We don't talk about Patsy Walker Hellcat that often on Top 10 Nerd, but lately, I don't know, I've just been in kind of like a Hellcat kind of mood, I guess. Hellcat is definitely a hero who is overlooked on the Avengers roster, and honestly, her history has granted her some pretty unique and fun powers. I had fun looking back into Hellcat's past to be like, oh yeah, she has all these cool things. She has some magical abilities, including the ability to basically like dodge magic and see through illusions, making her hard to target for any magic users. She even can tap into a demonic side of herself, calling upon demonic energy to give her a boost in certain realms and in certain instances. It's conditional, but still is pretty cool. Number 8, Hawkeye. Hawkeye is often thought of as just being a guy with some arrows who has really good aim. Kinda is that. But the fact that he's one of the few human members of the Avengers who doesn't have any superpowers per se, other than maybe like really enhanced eyesight, but not superpowered, just like abnormally good in ways that sometimes don't make sense, is exactly why he deserves more respect, more love, more admiration from us all. Hawkeye's Clint Barton doesn't have powers to rely on, and he still manages to keep up with the rest of his teammates. That's pretty awesome, I gotta say. I wasn't always a Clint fan, but I like Clint Barton, he's pretty cool. Number 7, Spider-Woman. Spider-Woman is another character who sometimes gets shafted in the comics, and she is a character who often gets compared to her seeming male counterpart, Spider-Man. Although truth be told, in canon continuity, Spider-Woman actually is older than Peter, and therefore in comic books history anyways, she was actually Spider-Woman before Peter was Spider-Man. She's canonically older, so I mean, she has a kid and everything. Something Peter has never really even been allowed to do permanently as a character, settle down, have kids, and grow up, all that good stuff. Although I would say that the fun of Jessica Drew is that she might be adulting really hard, but she never really fully grows up. She's always fun, sassy, and still figuring out so much of her life as she goes through it. To me, she's always been not only fun and badass, but also a relatable character, which is why I feel like she deserves to be featured more and get more respect from Marvel writers and fans alike. Hence why she's on this list. Number 6, Black Black Knight. Honestly, probably one of the most underappreciated heroes we have as leader of the Avengers is the Black Knight. That's right, he was a leader of the Avengers, everyone. The Black Knight is a character who feels like lately he has faded into obscurity somewhat. I thought maybe with Kit Harington, made famous for his role as reluctant hero Jon Snow in the series Game of Thrones, playing Dane Whitman in the Eternals movie, we might actually see a resurgence of this character in the comics, and I was hyped for that, bolstered by his MCU appearance. However, while Dane's role as the Black Knight was teased at the end of the film with the appearance of his ancestral cursed sword, the Ebony Blade, we have yet to hear anything about the development of his announced series, and even Harington himself says he's basically in the dark on what Marvel's plans might be involving this character. So it seems like we might have to wait a bit longer for Black Knight to get the respect he so deserves from modern day fans, but hopefully that's coming at some point soon. Like, come on, Marvel, give me the Black Knight series, give me something, I want it. I feel like it could be cool and it would be very different. Number 5, Vision. Vision hasn't really had a major focus on him in some time. I love that he agreed to join up with Carol's Avengers, and as such is getting more time on the Avengers team in the present day, where he can once more be in the spotlight. But I do feel like there was a little period in there where Vision wasn't really doing much of anything. Vision might seem like a boring character devoid of personality because he's an android, but I would argue that at times he is maybe more human than the rest of his teammates. There are moments in the comics where for me he reminds me of another android that I know and love, Data from Star Trek. Often it is his humanity that seems to motivate him, and also seems to be something that Viz struggles with as well, both in realizing its existence within himself and in accepting that human part of himself. Like, I mean, you gotta realize it before you can accept it, but even when I feel like he is kind of like, oh, maybe that's what's going on, I feel like he's not willing to fully embrace his humanity. I know he's an android, but sometimes he's just some really human stuff, guys. Number 4, She-Hulk. She-Hulk recently just had her own solo series, which as far as I've read thus far is amazing, by the way. I haven't finished it yet, but yeah. That series unfortunately just ended, and honestly it bums me out. She-Hulk is Jennifer Walters, who contrary to some very loud opinions, is not just a gender-swapped version of the Hulk. She is her own character in her own right, being Bruce Banner's cousin, who he came to shortly after his transformation into the Hulk, kinda seeking some help from Jen. However, during his visit, Jen was attacked by criminals who were worried that she, as a lawyer, was going to take down their boss. A very real threat, since Jen is actually a pretty great criminal lawyer, or was so at the time anyways. Now she's more into superhero lawyering, but still. After this attack on her life and Bruce being forced into giving her an emergency blood transfusion to save it, Jen Walters was forever changed into the sometimes monster, mostly hero, She-Hulk. She-Hulk has had a tumultuous path throughout the comics, having her highs and her lows. She has had long runs and short runs, and I'm kinda disappointed she isn't doing more these days, especially considering she also just got her own Disney Plus series, so you'd think that would help to give her character a comic book boost, but not really apparently. Her recent series didn't even make it to 20 issues sadly, and like I said, it honestly was great. I'm not fully up to date, but trust me, the issues I've read are really good. You should check it out. It's like classic She-Hulk. It felt so like original She-Hulk times. Ugh, so good. Number 3, Captain Marvel. I would argue that in a way, Carol is only recently starting to get her due. Captain Marvel has been and always will be one of the strongest Avengers around when it comes to the team. She is a cosmic powerhouse who has overcome a ton of adversity, but when it comes to her getting the respect that she deserves, she has had honestly a rough past. There was the whole thing with Marcus Immortus, see Avengers 197 through 200 for that fiasco, and then there was Civil War II, which saw Carol deal with some major character issues regarding how she was presented and written at that time. She became the villain of the story that should have honestly been equal in terms of which Avenger fans sided with, like in Civil War I. However, that isn't how Civil War II went down. Lately, however, Captain Marvel is finally getting the respect she deserves, as she has recently become the leader of the Avengers as we move into this new Avengers era. I am excited to see this kind of development happening for Carol, who has always been a strong and intelligent character who understands how to best utilize and motivate a team. So see her in that leadership role, it's perfect for me. Number 2, Blue Marvel. Blue Marvel has barely made any appearances recently in the comics, despite being one of the greatest powerhouses that we've ever seen. It's downright rude if you ask me. If I'm missing something amazing that happened with him lately as well, let me know, but I don't think he's really even been around since the end of the Defenders Beyond series. Before that, he appeared in Doctor Doom series, I believe, but my question is, when are we getting a Blue Marvel series? Huh? Marvel? Give us that Blue Marvel series right now, I want to read it. While Blue Marvel has not been a member of the main Avengers roster, which honestly also seems insane to me, he has been a member of the Mighty Avengers, which is why I'm including him on this list. And also because, come on, Marvel, give us a solo series, do it. Number 1, Scarlet Witch. Only now is Scarlet Witch Wanda Maximoff starting to get the story she has so long deserved. For years, Scarlet Witch was epically burdened by her past and haunted by all of her misdeeds and mistakes she had made along the way. M-Day has to have been one of the worst moments in mutant history, and it's all kinda cause of Wanda. M-Day happened in 2005 in the comics as a result of Scarlet Witch striking out at mutant kind after the events of House of M, where she attempted to create a reality where many heroes were happy. Fortunately, she is now finally moving to a place of healing, refusing to be defined by her past while running a magic shop in Lockkill, New York, with the help of MCU's Darcy, appearing in the comics for the first time. Here, finally, Wanda refused to let her past define her present self. Yes, finally, it's only taken us since 2005. It's taken so long to get to this point, but we're finally here. Ugh, poor Wanda.